So like most people, as my code bases get bigger, I've really struggled in the past to keep agentic development working. This is a well-documented thing. The larger the code base, the larger the context windows needed, which although context windows have gotten so much bigger, you still struggle. The grepping is not accurate. The planning leaves some stuff to be desired. And ultimately, when you do the work, you end up with orphan code all over. I probably spent months trying to figure out a way to get around this, and ultimately implemented anchor tags, which to me have solved a tremendous amount of the accuracy, both in planning as well as the validation. I don't struggle with legacy leftover code, just random pockets of the code base. I can validate the work with a lot more confidence. So today I want to show you anchor tags and how you can use them yourself. Hey guys, Ben here. Quick pause in the video to say if you like this content, please like and subscribe. We're very close to 2,000 subscribers. I would really appreciate it. Back to the content. Bye. All right, so let's get into it. What are anchor tags? Anchor tags are essentially just metadata. And there's a lot of, by the way, like anchor tags are not something that like I'm trying to claim I made the name of or something like that. You could probably tell me that this is even the wrong name, but anchor tags are essentially just metadata. Like I think I have an example done here before I get into it. Let me find it. Yeah, so like just metadata. And in short, what I've started to do with my apps is basically put this metadata like throughout the entire code base, and I'll answer why in a second. But for context, one of my code bases has roughly 35,000 anchor tags in it, and there's about 1,300 different services. Now, the key thing comes down to why is this necessary? And to understand this, you have to understand how AI reads code bases. And like, once again, I'm not an expert by any means in this, but my understanding is that AI largely is relying on greps for code bases as well as its own kind of like query-esque systems. But what it's doing is just essentially trying to like make some kind of a query, find a bunch of files, and then reads the files, right? And for whatever reason, and once again, I don't quite understand this, what I find is that with very large code bases, it traditionally is going to just miss things too often. I fought this in a whole variety of ways. If I go to this, right? So I'll say stuff like use 5 research agents, right? And it would use 5 research agents and go through the whole code base, and I would have plans that like look on the surface super, super detailed and comprehensive. And then just too often in the code base, it would just be missing stuff. By the way, you can see like here's examples, right? So here's the surface, here's the role, here's some tags. So why do anchor tags make this more effective? Because essentially it provides 2 things. One is it provides context and linking across code that otherwise can be hard for AI to figure out at scale. It's remarkably good at doing it in like small scale, but not necessarily at scale. And then the second is it allows basically a deterministic queryable system that AI can use. What we do now, what we're doing when we're doing our coding is we're not telling AI, hey, go research this. What we do is we basically have a ledger system that it is a single manifest that has every like different surface that the anchor tags use. So in this case, like all of these things roll up, right? So then AI starts there. And it basically says, okay, like between this and the grepping, what do I think I need from a context perspective? And then what it does is it writes custom queries against that. And then against those custom queries, now it starts to do all of its grepping, basically, right? And what it's doing is you're basically guaranteeing that you are pulling, in theory, if assuming your anchor tags are accurate, all of the relevant information that then AI will need to then run its greps against. And what we have found is this is substantially more effective at getting the complete context for something for AI to be able to make plans than just having no like metadata system within the code. And the main, I think, difference or reason why this didn't exist like in like human world is like it's so tedious to do this at scale, right? 35,000. Also to try to come up with all the different groupings, stuff like that. Also, I'm not claiming it's perfect by any means. One of the most common things that I find when I pause and do some cleanup stuff is that like I have very related anchor tag like surfaces and stuff that probably should be one. And so it's not perfect, but it has made it super, super, super helpful. What's also really helpful about having this sort of deterministic queryable system is that basically your planning and your validation can now use a deterministic sort of source of truth as opposed to having to try to do planning just with AI and then write all your test automation, right? So basically, as part of your planning, you can basically work in a lot of your anchor tags. And then so your validation, you basically are validating, for example, if you're refactoring something and therefore like a feature which has an anchor tag surface and that anchor tag surface shows up in 30 places of the code base, right? If that's supposed to be deprecated, then how is it depreciated or deprecated? Deprecated. I always mix that up. Deprecated. Then you can actually write custom queries to basically make sure, hey, that doesn't exist, right? And the key thing though is you don't make your prompt like, hey, just make the anchor tag go away. You basically say, hey, we're deprecating this feature. It should not be in the code base anymore. Look for this anchor tag. And if you see any code related to the feature that's in the anchor tag, remove it, right? And so what you're doing is you're basically introducing determinism along with the system. Now, how we choose to do anchor tags is basically in pairs essentially with our policy as code system. So what we do is we have, for example, rules for the code base that say if X amount of lines of code exist without an anchor tag, that's a problem. Alternatively, if we have too many anchor tags in a density of code, that's a problem. We have like rules like no anchor tags or surfaces or whatever can basically be added to the code base without being added to the manifest. And so like most things I try to talk about, like this system doesn't really work in isolation. It works basically in concert with the other systems, right? It works because we have other systems when we're doing agentic development that are basically enforcing how and when this system is being used. The other thing that it does is it's a really nice metadata for linking a lot of test automation coverage to the code it's covered. So for example, you can obviously use a bunch of coverage frameworks and stuff like that with unit tests to map out code coverage, particularly at the code level. But what this is really doing is allowing us to start to map out, okay, here's the end-to-end, the API, the integration, the unit tests, all associated with these anchor tags. And it gives us a much more effective view of the entire test pyramid. And yeah, I'm going to guess like the 70%, it's not, I have no real data or evidence to back that up. But what I found, particularly with these large code bases, is that my planning, like even if I ran agents 5 times or multiple rounds, like I was still just missing too many things. And then the other thing that was really interesting was when I was doing the development on these really complex plans, you would just leave orphan code that it thinks, oh yeah, I signed off, the plan's good. And then you like add the anchor system and then you're like, oh God, there's like all of this orphan code that's just left there from like leftover things. Make the tag system boring. It doesn't work if basically every anchor tag is a completely different bespoke set of tags or anything like that. You want boring anchor tags. You want to limit and logically group. I think our rule is that anchor tags can't be the exact same for more than like 25, but they also cannot be like unique. So I think it's like somewhere in the range of like 10 to 15 kind of similar anchor tags for linking things together from a metadata perspective is how we basically do it. And then, yeah, the point is AI did not understand the whole repo, does not understand the whole repo. The repo becomes more legible, and that's the rule of it, right? So if we go look at this, you can see anchor tags. And I was actually looking at this example because I think this is probably overkill. In files that like largely are the single purpose files, I don't think you need anchor tags for every single method. And I was actually thinking, oh, yeah, I don't know if I want to show this, but I also want to basically explain that I don't think that these rules are always perfect. And so you can see basically like this is all of the anchor tags, right? And so when we are doing our planning, it basically can see this is an anchor tag related to billing. And so anytime it's looking at billing anchor tags, this comes in. But then also you have like where and how it's being used and other tags. So yeah, what I would tell you is like this as a planning and verification tool, particularly when your code base reaches a certain threshold, has absolutely been critical for our continued success in doing large scale development on large code bases. If you have any questions about it or want this presentation, I'm going to try to post this up soon. And yeah, I know I dropped off YouTube there for a few weeks. Life got a bit busy, so I'm going to hopefully get back onto this track. If you have any questions or other future video topics, hit me up. Always really excited to get into your things that you care about. And yeah, really appreciate the support. Looking forward to getting back on it. Talk soon. Bye.